Weekend Taboo. Chapter 1, Contractual Relationships. In a luxurious office on the top floor of a skyscraper, the city lights up outside the window, but it has nothing to do with the man sitting behind his desk. His gaze was as sharp as a knife, and his expression was cold, as if all the light had been swallowed up. He is Liu Kyung-sun, a 29-year-old Kochi elite, a business upstart who combines wisdom and power. Tall and straight, handsome and unparalleled appearance, whether it is his career or appearance, it is impossible to ignore. However, behind his flawless face, there is a fatal secret hidden. He is zero, pure zero. He never told anyone this secret. Even he himself had learned how not to think about it. For him, it was an impassable gully, a realm he could not reach. Therefore, he chose another way to satisfy his cravings for certain needs. Every weekend, he would meet with a man with clear rules between them, money transactions, no feelings, no interference in private life, and no excessive talk about the past and the future. This man's name is Song Hung-cheng. He is 1.85 meters tall, muscular, and has a pair of big watery eyes, which almost perfectly fits Liu Kyung-sun's needs. The two agreed to meet every Saturday night without any emotional involvement, and Liu Kyung-sun never told Song Hung-cheng his real name, and the purest monetary relationship between the two was maintained. For Liu Kyung-sun, such an arrangement is perfect, and there is no need to worry about any additional troubles at all. However, the balance of all this eventually began to crack because of some trivial details. Chapter 2, The Lost of the Weekend. Don't call me just that, okay? Liu Kyung-sun sat on the sofa, his tone was cold and threatening, and his eyes swept over Song Hung-cheng without a trace of warmth. Okay baby. The corners of Song Hung-cheng's mouth rose slightly, and his thick eyebrows curled up, with a kind of banter. His voice was low and seductive, as if he was challenging Liu Kyung-sun's bottom line. I didn't tell you that weekends are just deals, don't get involved in my life. Liu Kyung-sun's tone was cold and unquestionable. His language is full of an irrefutable sense of coercion. Then you can't go on a blind date with other men, he can't do it when he sees it. Song Hung-cheng's tone was calm and free, and he looked at Liu Jianxian without blinking, as if he was the master of this game. Liu Kyung-sun's brows furrowed slightly, and a trace of uneasiness appeared in his heart. The man who went on a blind date was arranged by his father, and he didn't want to see it at all, but he had to go. All these arrangements made him feel deeply uncomfortable. He thought it was just a money transaction, but he didn't expect that Song Hung-cheng's words were like a sword, stabbing him in the soft underbelly. He didn't want to admit that he had emotional fluctuations, but the churning in his heart prevented him from calming down. Exactly, what is this relationship to him? Was it an escape or an incorrigible mistake? Chapter 3, Unexpected Discoveries. As time went on, weekend encounters became more frequent. Although the two have always maintained indifference and distance on the surface, the inner bond has deepened day by day. Liu Kyung-sun found that Song Hung-cheng was not as simple as he imagined. This man not only has an impeccable appearance, but also has extremely high intelligence and insight, and can even analyze Liu Kyung-sun's heart invisibly. One Friday night, Liu Kyung-sun was working on an important contract at the company, when suddenly, the screen of his mobile phone lit up, showing Song Hung-cheng's name. Liu Kyung-sun's heart trembled unconsciously, although he told himself that there should not be any emotional fluctuations, but whenever he saw this name, he couldn't control the ups and downs in his heart. What are you doing? Song Hung-cheng's deep voice came from the other end of the phone, with a hint of unusual concern. Handle the work, what's the matter? Liu Kyung-sun's tone was still indifferent, but the anxiety in his heart could not be concealed. Work is important, but it's not necessarily more important than yourself. There was a faint challenge in Song Hung-cheng's tone, which made Liu Kyung-sun's heart tremble violently. His instincts told him that the man seemed to be aware of some secret deep inside him. I don't have time for small talk, see you on Saturday. Liu Kyung-sun hung up the phone in a hurry, but there were uncalm waves in his heart. At Saturday's meeting, the two continued as usual and started as planned. However, this time, Liu Kyung-sun clearly felt Song Hung-cheng's strangeness. There was a little less banter in his eyes and a little more sincerity, as if he was silently waiting for Liu Kyung-sun's reaction. What the hell do you want to do? Liu Kyung-sun finally couldn't help it, and his tone was a little impatient. All I want to do is let you see me. Song Hung-cheng's tone was calm, with an irresistible attraction. Chapter 4, the liberation of emotions. The distance between the two is getting closer and closer, and Liu Kyungsoon's mood begins to change. He found that he could no longer handle the relationship as calmly as he had in the past. Every weekend, he can't ignore his dependence on Song Hongcheng, and even begins to look forward to that short time together. One day, Liu Kyungsoon suddenly received a call from his father, telling him that the blind date arranged by his mother had been determined and he needed to meet on a weekend in the following month. There was no room for negotiation in my father's words, it was a family arrangement, and there was no escaping it no matter what. At this moment, Liu Kyungsoon felt unprecedented suffocation. He knew he didn't want to get married, and he didn't even want to have anything to do with that blind date. But when he looked back at Song Hongcheng, he found that he couldn't let go of the relationship easily. What would you choose? Song Hongcheng asked suddenly, his eyes were deep, as if he could see through everything. I don't want to make these arrangements, I just want you. Liu Kyungsoon's heart finally blurted out, and his tone was full of long-hidden vulnerability. Song Hongcheng looked at him quietly, a trace of tenderness flashed in his eyes, and then slowly spoke, then, maybe it's time for us to redefine this relationship. Chapter 5, Dawn. Over time, the relationship between the two has changed dramatically. Liu Kyungsoon no longer saw this relationship as just a transaction of money, he began to recognize Song Hongcheng's existence from the bottom of his heart. Song Hongcheng's sincerity and affection gradually broke Liu Kyungsoon's defense, and he began to learn to let go of his past prejudices and accept a more authentic self. And after that heated conversation with his father, Liu Kyungsoon decided to stop following the expectations of the outside world, but to follow his own heart. He knew that no matter what the future holds, he had found his true happiness. This is not only a story about love, but also a process of self-discovery and liberation. On this road, Liu Kyungsoon is no longer the ruthless boss, but has learned how to love, how to believe, and how to live more authentically. And weekends will no longer be taboo. Chapter 6, The Emotional Challenge. As time passed, the relationship between Liu Kyungsoon and Song Hongcheng deepened. Although the two once had a clear rule to keep a certain distance from each other, the spark of affection was like a hidden fire, which finally broke out in an inadvertent moment. Liu Kyungsoon gradually discovered that he could not see Song Hongcheng as just a trading partner as before. Song Hongcheng's influence on him has far exceeded his original expectations. However, the relationship is not entirely without its challenges. Especially when Liu Kyungsoon's father, Liu Hancheo, learned of his relationship with Song Hongcheng, the situation became more complicated. What the hell do you want to do, Chihiro? Liu Hancheo's calm voice came from the other end of the phone, with a hint of undoubted threat. You know what the consequences of such a relationship will be, right? Not only have you hurt your family's reputation, you've also disrupted our plans. Listening to his father's cold tone, Liu Kyungsoon took a deep breath, put down the document in his hand, and said in a resolute tone, I know what I'm doing, father. It's my choice, and I'll take it whatever the outcome. But the father's voice did not soften because of these words, but became a little colder. Do you think your relationship with him can last? Don't forget, it's not just your personal business, it's the future of our family. After hanging up the phone, Liu Kyungsoon's mood became heavier and heavier. In any case, the pressure behind this relationship is still unavoidable. Even though he has deep feelings for Song Hongcheng, the family's expectations are like a mountain, pressing him so hard that he can't breathe. He began to question whether he should follow his father's wishes, abandon the relationship, and return to that familiar and safe track. However, the moment he saw Song Hongcheng smiling in front of him, his heart shook again. There was fearlessness and sincerity in that smile, and he felt a warmth that he had never felt before. He knew he couldn't go back. Chapter 7, The Interweaving of Hearts. A month later, on the weekend, Liu Kyungsoon and Song Hongcheng made an appointment at the cafe they frequented. When Song Hongcheng appeared at the door, his gentle eyes were still deep, as if they could penetrate all doubts. This time, Liu Kyungsoon noticed that there was no banter or frivolity in Song Hongcheng's eyes, but there was a firmness and sincerity that people could not ignore. It looks a little different today. Liu Kyungsoon frowned slightly, he noticed that Song Hongcheng seemed to have changed. I think today should be the time for us to have a good talk. Song Hongcheng's tone was calm, but with a subtle emphasis. Liu Kyungsoon's heart tightened, although he had a premonition that today would not be an ordinary meeting, but he did not plan to escape, but wanted to know what Song Hongcheng planned to say. What are you talking about? Liu Kyungsoon picked up his coffee, trying to keep himself calm. The future between us. Song Hung Cheng smiled faintly, but there was a deep meaning that people couldn't ignore. I know you don't want to be bound, and you don't want this relationship to affect your career and family. But, Chihiro, I don't want to hide my feelings anymore. Liu Kyungsun's heartbeat accelerated slightly. He had never heard Song Hung Cheng express his emotions so bluntly. At that moment, Liu Kyungsun knew that he could no longer avoid the challenges brought by this relationship. And what are you going to do? Liu Kyungsun tried to stay calm, but the fluctuations in his heart could not be concealed. I'm willing to change for you. Song Hang Chin's voice was low and sincere. Whether it's the pressure of the family or the eyes of the outside world, I don't care anymore. I just want to walk with you through this life. Listening to these words, Liu Kyungsun's heart set off 1,000 waves. He couldn't help but ask himself, is this kind of relationship worth persevering on? He used to think that he could handle everything calmly and maintain his sanity without being swayed by emotions, but now, it seems that it is not so simple. But are you really ready? Liu Kyungsun asked in a low voice, with a hint of confusion in his eyes. This is not only our business, but also my family and even the entire business community. Song Hung Cheng smiled slightly, with a hint of calmness in his eyes. I know it's not easy, but this is what I'm willing to bear. I don't want to hide anymore, and I don't want to wait any longer. At this moment, Liu Kyungsun's mood completely changed. He knew that no matter what the outside world had, he had found what he was looking for: a sincere relationship, a partner with whom he could face the future. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 8, Decisions. After that deep conversation, the doubts in Liu Kyungsun's heart gradually dissipated. He decided not to hide his feelings for Song Hung Cheng anymore, and he no longer cared about the voices of the outside world. Although the pressure of his father remains, and although the expectations of the family cannot be ignored, he knows that this is his own life and that he has the right to choose his own future. At a family gathering, Liu Kyungsun finally mustered up the courage to propose his choice to his father. When he told his father that he no longer followed the family's arrangement to take the path of marriage, but chose Song Hung Cheng, Liu Hancheo's face sank, but he did not immediately refute it. You know what the consequences are. Liu Hancheo said in a low voice, with a hint of helplessness in his tone. I know. Liu Kyungsun replied calmly, but this is my own decision, and I will bear everything. When his father was silent for a moment, he finally put down the cup in his hand and took a deep look at Liu Kyungsun. Although there was still dissatisfaction and disappointment in his eyes, he did not continue to oppose after all, but chose to remain silent. Liu Kyungsun knew that this was just a new beginning between him and his family. He no longer compromised for the sake of his family's expectations, but chose to follow his heart. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 9, Rebirth. With the passage of time, the relationship between Liu Kyungsun and Song Hung Cheng became more and more stable. Although they still face pressure from their families and the outside world, they have always stayed together and supported each other through every difficulty. Liu Kyungsun finally understands that love is not a transaction, but a journey that two people have walked together. He is no longer the indifferent business tyrant, but a real man who has learned to love and be loved. And the weekend, for them, is no longer a taboo, but an interweaving an agreement with each other's hearts. They are no longer two people in the past, but two souls facing the future together. Underscore 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 un. Epilogue. Weekend Taboo is a story about love, choice, and growing up. It tells us that true love is not about escaping and compromising, but about two people who still choose to accompany each other and move towards the future in the face of difficulties and challenges. In this relationship, Liu Kyungsun learned how to let go of his guard and accept someone who could walk side by side with him. And Song Hung Cheng also found his true value and belonging in this relationship. Their stories will continue to be quietly written in the city,